Silence before the speech. In the oldest hall in the known universe, carved from a moon that predates the galaxy itself, the 13 grand species had gathered. Each species had ruled for millennia. Each had armies, fleets, and histories soaked in conquest. The Grand Tribunal was called to settle a brewing interstellar conflict. But when the final seat was filled, a being of pure starlight, a celestarch of the Eternal Ones, rose and said, "No voice shall echo in this hall until the human speaks." Laughter followed. Humans? The youngest race? The most violent? They hadn't even been invited. But the Eternal Ones didn't laugh. They knelt. The grand hall held its breath. Beneath the vaulted ceiling, etched with star maps of fallen empires, the 13 delegations watched envoy Iden Voss walk toward the dais. His footsteps were soft, yet they echoed like thunder through the assembly. Onlookers leaned forward, some expecting defiance, others hoping for answers that no fleet had provided. He stood before the tribunal AI, an ancient consciousness woven from quantum strands older than any living star. Its holographic form shifted subtly, as though adapting to his presence. Across its face flickered countless timescales and civilizations, none of them human. Designation confirmed. It intoned, voice impossibly even. Human designation, the one who will speak. A murmur passed through the crowd. Human, they thought, lesser in stature, fragile by nature. Not a warrior, not a mage lord or consciousness elder, just a linguist. Iden cleared his throat, pressing his palms against the dais. He drew a calm breath, feeling the weight of 13 civilizations pressing gravity upon his shoulders. "Tribunal respected elder," he began, his voice slightly wavering. "I understand protocol is about power, authority, strategy." And yet, he held up his data pad, its screen glowing softly. "I was chosen not for force, but for empathy. Not for weapons, but for words." The Valaxian ambassador, her skin mottled gray, twisted a fine strand of ceremonial bone. "You're a scholar," she hissed. "We appointed generals before. Why a bookish speaker?" I'd met her gaze evenly. "Because only with understanding can we heal wounds." Disappearances in the neutral zones weren't tactical. They were psychological. Blind fear. He tapped the pad. A hollow map lit up behind him, showing corridors of space labeled as neutral. Several clusters glowed red. Iden continued, voice steadier. "These zones are supposed to be safe. Birthplace of trade, diplomacy. But now they're voids. Fear zones. Fleets pull back. Refugee convoys stall. Children born there learn only fear." He looked back at the tribunal AI. War solves some problems, or scorches entire systems. But what if this is something else? An echo of something deeper. A guard wolf barked in the gallery, an audible gasp. Iden pressed on. "My talent isn't diplomacy. It's language. Not translation, but nuance. The pausing, the hesitating, the unspoken meaning between words." He turned to face the delegates. "I want to listen. To the missing, to their families, to what the silence is saying now." The tribunal AI's form pulsed. Empathy algorithms confirm. Human resonance patterns yield optimal interpretive fidelity in multivariate cultural emergencies. A human-like voice from the gallery spoke sharply. "Algorithms or not, trust is earned." "Are you saying humans feel more, or only simulate feeling?" Iden felt the question reach inside him. He paused, then answered truthfully. "Humans do feel. We break. We cry. We rage. But we also understand what those emotions mean. I learned this after..." He hesitated, swallowing hard. "After I lost my sister in a zone collapse. The moment I realized grief wasn't just words, I lived it." A silence followed, so complete he could hear his own heartbeat. Then, the tribunal AI cut in. "Envoy Voss is authorized. Failure. Unacceptable." Its voice ended like a verdict. The grand doors sealed behind Iden with an echo like destiny. He stepped off the dais and into a corridor of marble and pulsating glyph light. For silent guards fell in behind him, representatives of each neutral zone fleet. They did not flinch, but none dared speak. Iden approached the first door on the left. Access, investigative files. His fingers trembled as he unlocked it. Inside, hollow archives stacked decades of missing persons reports, faces looping as datapads cycled. The victims were diplomats, merchants, children, and families, spanning every species, every race. Their vanishings untraceable, their last locations blank. A diplomat's mother, a ward from the serial delegation, walked in behind him. Her tears leaked as she tapped a date. This is 32 cycles old. They vanished in orbit. Her voice cracked. They were the Parley fleet. And we found nothing. No wreckage. No skin logs. Nothing. Iden knelt and placed a hand on her shoulder. I need to understand who they were. We start there. She pulled back sharply, her eyes cold. They were emissaries. Speak for us, not as anthropologists. Find them. The words lingered long after she left. Iden straightened and shut the doors. In less than an hour, he scanned logs from 3 sectors. A pattern emerged. Each disappearance followed a burst of unidentified broadcast energy, emotion-based. Chill, panic, possible empathy override. The final link snapped at his mind. He asked the AI to open the neural forensics feed. On screen, an image flickered. A child, no one knew whose, standing in an airlock. Mouth open, eyes empty. Then everything black. No one spoke in the hall afterward. At dinner, the 13 envoys refused to sit with him, but left a space. He ate soba noodles silently, with olive comfort sauce, most xenon rare. At night, he lay awake, thinking of his sister's last words. They came like whispers, then nothing. He pressed his hand to his chest. I speak to listen. To stop that. Back in his quarters, the tribunal messenger arrived. No words, just a file. Project Empathus, declassified. It contained data he hadn't seen. Non-diplomatic missions launched into the void, experimenting on emotion transmitters. Tests recorded in orphan holovitz. In those videos, children were used as conduits. Eyes glowing, emotions hijacked, voices twisted into screams before silence. Humans had weapons, not just physical, but psychological. He sank to the floor and pressed record on his desk console. One message, for the tribunal, for the galaxy. He recorded, voice cracking. They used empathy as a weapon, not to connect, but to erase. He sent it directly to the tribunal AI. The next day, delegates found him waiting in the chamber again. No portfolio, no datapad, just a human with guilt in his eyes. Silence reigned. The tribunal AI activated. Holographic light reflecting off silent blade crests behind the envoys. Envoy Voss, will you speak? He looked around, saw the serial mother, back again. The Valaxian bone necklace, a warlord hardened. The Krish emissary, hairless and anxious. He nodded. Standing resolute, he said, yes. He stepped forward and spoke. I will speak for those who vanished. I will ask why empathy became the weapon. To silence, to take lives, to keep galaxies from connecting. If we lose that, we lose everything stronger than all the fleets. He hesitated. I will speak. Because if we don't remember what empathy means, then we've already lost. A weight settled in that chamber, real, unshakable. The tribunal AI flickered once more. No decree followed. Instead, its voice slowed. Proceed. He stood ready, because a galaxy waited to hear not how he spoke, but what he remembered. The stars bent unnaturally around trial space, folding into prisms of motionless color. Even seasoned void navigators refused to approach it. Coordinates changed mid-flight, and time ran sideways. But Envoy Iden Voss had no choice. His shuttle passed the last beacon of real space. From here on, he would be judged, not by people, but by something older. Trial space was not a place. It was a corridor woven into the edge of perception, what ancient scripts called a sentient gate. Forged by the Eternal Ones, it had no walls, no doors, only thresholds and witnesses. As a ship entered, all systems shut down. Every engine, every sensor, even oxygen recycling. Yet Voss could breathe. Light pulsed through the cockpit. not bright but aware. He was not alone. A voice, not sound, but a vibration in his spine spoke. State your cause. Iden did not answer with pre-written dialogue. No speech. No performance. Instead, he whispered, I came because I listened. A pause. Then light formed shapes in front of him. 3 other ships. 3 other envoys from other civilizations. Krish, Voltari, Zonrek. Each proud. Each ambitious. One by one, the light wrapped around them like transparent silk and flared. The first ship was consumed in a burst of flame, without heat. The second shattered into glass. The third simply vanished. No wreckage. No trace. As if its pilot had never existed. Then silence. Iden's ship drifted forward, untouched. He swallowed hard, staring at the infinite tunnel ahead. Then came his second voice. Older. Slower. You do not carry conquest. Only memory. Proceed. And then, something impossible happened. The cockpit dissolved. Iden stood on a walkway. No suit. No barrier. Floating through a corridor of stars and broken languages. The floor shimmered beneath his feet like heated glass. Around him, fragments of voices passed like comets. Lullabies in extinct dialects, declarations of peace, screams of species long gone. He kept walking. He felt watched, not in fear, but in measurement. The Eternal Ones were not gods. They were not even alive in any way a species could define. But they remembered. Every lie, every last word said before war. Ahead, the walkway narrowed. A figure appeared. It wore no armor, no form, just light. And from its chest pulsed a living rune, ancient and human. It spoke, not aloud, but inside him. You carry a story. Speak it now, or be undone. Iden closed his eyes. And in that breath, he remembered. His sister, lost in the neutral zone. Her last transmission, a melody they sang as children. If you can hear me, I'm not afraid. He told them. Told the Eternal Ones everything. No shield, no spin. Not to be believed, but to be understood. I never wanted to be here, he said aloud. I'm not a hero. I'm not anyone. But I remember what it felt like when someone looked at you and didn't want anything except for you to live. The light brightened. Then speak for us, the voice said. Because we no longer can. The path ahead cracked open. Not into space, but into something deeper. Beneath him, a platform of crystallized intent stretched toward a glowing nexus. A lattice of memory where everything the Eternal Ones had preserved shimmered like threads. He saw Terran images. A nurse holding a dying alien during the collapse. A prisoner on Europa letting his guard eat first. A moment when humanity, flawed and broken, chose mercy instead of vengeance. These were not military victories. They were emotional rebellions. Refusals to become monsters. Then another voice echoed. His own, but older. Only those who feel beyond themselves may rebuild what they did not destroy. He turned to see himself. A projection? A future? A possibility? The mirror self stepped forward. They think you represent Earth, it said. But you don't. You represent what Earth lost and still chose to remember. Suddenly, the corridor darkened. A pulse, violent and ancient, rippled through space. Something was watching from outside. The Eternal Ones turned toward it. Their light trembled. A warning vibrated through Iden's body. The one who unmade now stirs. He didn't understand. Who? What? No answer. Only a shimmer at the far edge of the corridor, like a tear in space. A void that pulsed inward, swallowing light. Iden felt something cold against his ribs. His neuroseal, a Terran relic, was glowing. Reacting. The Eternal Ones hovered near him again. The disappearances, the silences, they're not accidents. They are echoes of the unmade one. Iden's mouth was dry. Why me? A final voice, older than galaxies, answered. Because Terrans are the last to speak and mean it. The gate ahead split. He was through. Back in his shuttle, systems restarted. The cockpit reassembled. Lights returned. No time had passed, and yet everything had changed. His flight path to the tribunal continued, unchallenged. Behind him, trial space sealed like a scar. But something followed him. Not visible, not entirely present. A pressure in the dark, a whisper in no known language. And yet he understood it. He speaks. We listen. There were places in the galaxy where even time refused to enter. The Vault of Forgotten Wars was one of them, hidden beneath the cold crust of Ilavarn Theta, guarded by gravity anomalies and light-absorbing towers. It was not a prison of bodies, but of memory, a tomb of screams, that a museum of regret. The tribunal sent no soldiers here. Only those who would speak for the voiceless were granted passage. Iden Voss stepped through the obsidian arch. No door closed behind him. The vault didn't need to trap him. The echoes would do that. Inside, there are no walls, just air thick with something unspeakable. No sound, yet the weight of 1,000 dying suns pressed on his chest. Dim motes of light floated in the dark like dust, unmoving and patient. A being met him at the threshold, Xericole of the Mind Weavers. She did not speak. She touched the center of Voss's forehead, and the vault accepted him. And then it began. Not like a dream, not like memory, like reliving. He was no longer Iden Voss of Earth. He was an Ilari child, watching his ocean world boil from orbit as terraforming bombs rained from above. He felt the steam enter his lungs. He screamed for a mother whose name he never knew, and she never came. Then, he was a Zarnith scribe, hands bound as an entire city was wiped out by psychic detonation. He heard each soul leave. He counted them, screamed each one. Then, he was Terran again. No, he was her. The walls around him crumbled. The vault structure faded into dust and ash. He stood in the corner of a shattered house. Earth, nuclear winter. The sky outside was a lid of frozen death, and the world inside this tiny shelter was quieter than death. She was alone, a woman, early 30s, filthy hands wrapped around something small. A child, her child. The boy coughed in his sleep. Weak, the woman wrapped a piece of burned cloth around his shoulders and pressed a kiss to his forehead. Her lips bled against his skin. And then, Voss felt it. Her decision. She was starving. The boy had only enough food for one more day. She gave it to him, and then she simply lay down next to him, humming. A lullaby she barely remembered. Her voice cracked on the notes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, eyes on the roof. "I wanted to give you trees." The scene flickered. Voss fell to his knees, gasping. Sweat poured down his face, though the vault was cold as bone. A Voltari medic who stayed behind to die with her patients. A Zonrex soldier who refused to fire. A Dvani explorer who saved a Terran boy and was disowned for it. Each one lit up as Voss passed, responding to his empathy like sensors long deprived of light. Xericole followed behind. "Do you know what this place is, Terran?" she finally asked. He didn't answer. She spoke again, this time slower. "It's not a record of war. It's a record of when people chose not to be monsters and were punished for it." He stopped walking. Something shifted in his posture, something ancient. Not pride, not shame, recognition. "We lost them," he whispered. "All of them. They chose kindness, and we buried them under louder things." The Mindweaver's 6 eyes flickered. "And yet, you feel them." "They feel me," Voss said. He turned. The hall was no longer silent. A low hum had begun, like a song rising from beneath the stone. The vault was singing. Not music, just resonance. From him, through him, and the message it carried was ready. Outside, on the ice world surface, Dvani listening towers picked up a pulse they hadn't registered in 5 millennia. The vault had spoken. When Iden emerged, hours later, or days, time meant little here. His face was pale but set. He said nothing. The tribunal's escort met him at the landing pad. Even they said nothing. Not after seeing the Mindweaver bow. Voss boarded the next diplomatic vessel. The vault was silent again. But for the first time since the Great Extinction era, it remembered hope. And somewhere deep in its endless halls, a projection lingered. A mother, holding her child, giving everything. And a Terran voice, almost imperceptible, whispering. The voice chamber was not a room. It was a wound in time, buried beneath the tribunal's citadel, carved into the bones of a dead star and wrapped in quantum stillness. It had not echoed with speech in over 3,000 standard cycles. Only once before had the chamber allowed a voice to ripple outward into the core archive, where every utterance would be written into the DNA of history itself. Now it waited, and Iden Voss, Terran, linguist, orphan of relevance, was to speak. He had not asked for this. No Terran had. The Echo Hall was older than empires, older than even the Dvani, the first rememberers, a place where truth and tone mattered more than rank, where lies decayed before they formed, where words left your mouth and never stopped traveling. Galactic species with neural song lines had legends about the chamber. They said a syllable spoken here could ripple across 10 dimensions. That intent could become law, that only those with clean inner resonance could enter without being hollowed. Voss stood alone on the obsidian disk at the center of the sphere. There was no microphone, no translator. The chamber didn't require technology. It required truth. Surrounding him, the tribunal's 13 ruling delegations watched from glass-inverted balconies, their faces masked in half-light. Some viewed him with apathy, others with quiet fury. Humans had no position here. Not anymore. He was here only because the ancient AI known as Concordia Prime had declared. Human designation, the one who will speak. And so he spoke, but not as a hero, not as a savior, not as a patriot. He began with silence. 3 seconds. 5. 9. He could feel the suspicion building in the room. And then, I'm not here to plead for my species. His voice rang across the chamber. Not through acoustics, but through resonance. The walls seemed to listen, storing the frequency. I'm not here because we are powerful. I'm here because we remember the ones who weren't. He let that hang. No reaction, but no interruption. Voss took a step forward on the disc. The floor beneath his boots pulsed softly. The chamber was syncing with his nervous system. There was once a man, a Terran peacekeeper. His name was forgotten by the time I was born. He left no statue, no title, just a file buried in a digital archive no one opened for 100 years. The Krish delegation leaned forward. Curious. This peacekeeper was assigned to a moon where 2 species, Alkai and Remerii, were fighting over the same soil. 500 years of blood. Children never saw a day without gunfire. Treaties had failed. One day, the peacekeeper walked alone into the dead zone. Carried no weapon, no translation helm, just a message. He offered them this. I will live between you. If either side raises a weapon, you will strike me first. The walls of the chamber dimmed. The archive was absorbing the memory. He built a home between the borders. Just a tent. No guards. No shields. He ate food offered by both sides. He attended their funerals. He read bedtime stories to the children of both species. One line in Alkai, one line in Remerii. And for 12 years, there was peace. A subtle shift in the chamber's temperature. Some delegates noticed. Most didn't. One night, a young Alkai soldier, angry, radicalized, broke the truce. Shot a Remerii elder. Retreated into the forest. Both sides gathered on the edge of the peacekeeper's tent, ready to resume war. But the peacekeeper stepped forward, and he said, "If blood must spill tonight, let it be mine first." And he raised his hands. They killed him. Together. The silence now was total. Not breathless. Heavy. And then they buried him. Together. The Dvani delegation leaned forward, unmoving. It's been 300 years since that war ended. The Alkai and the Remerii now live under one flag. The peacekeeper's name is carved into the center of that flagpole. Not as a Terran. Not as a hero. Just as a bridge. Voss paused. His voice grew quieter now. Not weaker, truer. You summon me here. You expect a justification for my species. But Earth doesn't ask to be measured by our strength or brilliance. Judge us by what we choose to remember. We remember the bridge. At that moment, the chamber vibrated. Not with light. Not with sound. With choice. From above, something began to descend. A being wrapped in living gold light. Neither male nor female. Wearing no crown, but radiating presence. The Celestarch of the Eternal Ones. They had not moved in 4 centuries. Had not spoken since the collapse of the Ninth Accord. Now they descended onto the speaking disk opposite Iden Voss, and knelt. Gasps, audible now, rippled from every delegation. The Celestarch's voice was not a voice. It was felt in the spine. He has spoken not to preserve, not to provoke, but to offer memory. The Eternal Ones had never kneeled to any living species. Now, they knelt before a human, before a linguist, before a forgotten envoy named Iden Voss. He didn't bow. He simply whispered, "We remember the bridge. We build more." The archive sealed the speech into its core. And for the first time in galactic history, the chamber echoed with hope. They did not bow quickly. They were not species given to sentiment. Most had forgotten the taste of humility long before humanity even discovered fire. But one by one, in the aftermath of Voss's words, they began to shift. It started with silence. Not the awkward silence of diplomacy, but a cell-deep quiet, as if the whole of existence leaned in to listen to something it had forgotten how to hear. The Dracs were the first. Brutal, insectoid, and ancient, their exoplates glimmered with the ash of stars consumed. Their war priests had once burned entire moons in the name of holy conquest. They did not kneel easily, but the venerant warlord, crowned in bone and stardust, rose from his molten throne in the viewing galleries. He turned to his advisors, whispered something. No translation came, and then he did what no Drax had done in over 12 millennia. He lowered his head, not in submission, in recognition. Then came the Voxari, cloud-born beings of pure neural gas. They'd once dismissed humans as meat vessels of emotional static. Their philosophies were carved into radiation, their memories transmitted through magnetic pulses. They had no bodies, no hands to raise or lower. And yet, the Voxari Prime, hovering in a toroid containment field, dimmed their core spin. Voxari for reverence. Thousands of their kind across the great clouds did the same, like stars blinking in silent agreement. The Sand Lords of Jakar, 9 followed. Living statues carved by gravity and heat, they had once enslaved 8 minor species. They now drew glyphs into the air using particles of their own crumbling forms. Words formed not with language, but sacrifice. They let part of themselves fall into dust, shaping the phrase. We bow not to Terran blood, but to the courage of Terran memory. The Tribunal Hall was shifting. Lights dimmed, shields powered down. The Tribunal AI, Concordia Prime, initiated a galactic relay. The gesture had begun spreading. Across solar systems, entire cultures paused. War fleets disengaged from sieges. Markets halted. Children were shown the speech of Iden Voss in fragments, fed through dreams and flickering holoscreens. And then, somewhere deep in the unaligned territories, a death cult known only as the Scorched Singers played an old Earth lullaby across their final battlefield. It was sung in Terran Standard. You are my sunshine. But not all bowed. Above them, watching from the blackened crown ring of the chamber, stood the delegation of the Kairos Imperium, the last and most powerful holdout. Unlike the others, the Kairos had not shifted, not moved, not breathed differently. Their crimson robes shimmered with nanowoven death counts, each thread representing a conquest. Their minds, shared through a hive throne, pulsed in calculated resistance. Kairos had ruled for 40 centuries. Never bowed, never yielded. Their belief was simple. Emotion is entropy. Mercy is erosion. Compassion is the soft rot that kills empires. They stood unmoved. The tribunal's tension spiked like gravity thickening. Would the Kairos kneel? The Celestarch of the Eternal Ones turned toward them. The golden figure, still half-kneeling before Iden Voss, tilted their head in thought, then spoke aloud, not with voice, but in pure awareness. You do not bow to Terran flesh. You bow to the memory they preserved. But the Kairos did not respond. Not yet. Instead, the Kairos speaker, a faceless construct wrapped in neural silk, turned to address the entire chamber. You ask us to venerate decay, it said coldly. To yield to soft bones who could not even protect their own cradle. The insult rippled. Voss stood still. Earth is dying, The Caro's speaker continued. Its waters poisoned, its skies wounded, its children fractured by war and regret. And now you come here offering compassion. No one interrupted. This was the dance of old power, of defiance. We respect no bridge built from tears. It was Malus of the Dvani who finally rose. A species of crystalline logic and ancient empathy. They rarely spoke twice in a tribunal's lifetime. Then you have learned nothing, Malus said, and you shall pass into the forgetting. That was the curse of the Dvani, to be forgotten by the archive, erased from memory. A fate worse than death for a species built on legacy. The Caros didn't respond. Instead, they turned as one and walked out of the chamber. No bow, no gesture, just retreat. And yet, even their exit felt like the beginning of their end. Voss did not gloat. He did not speak again. He simply turned to face the center of the tribunal floor. There, beneath the holographic dome, a visual map of the known galaxy flickered to life. And as the echoes of his speech continued to resonate, subtle changes appeared. Planets once marked as hostile began transmitting peace frequencies. Regions long darkened by silence opened portals. Ancient archives, sealed for centuries, were unlocked, each one pulsing with Terran memory files uploaded by scattered human vessels across the ages. Songs, poems, sacrifices, forgiveness. They called it the bowing of empires, but it was never about dominance. It was about remembrance. The tribunal AI whispered one final phrase to Voss, quietly, privately, as the chamber began to empty. In a galaxy of cold stars, warmth is revolution. They did not bow quickly. They were not species given a sentiment. Most had forgotten the taste of humility long before humanity even discovered fire. But one by one, in the aftermath of Voss's words, they began to shift. It started with silence. Not the awkward silence of diplomacy, but a cell-deep quiet, as if the whole of existence leaned in to listen to something it had forgotten how to hear. The Dracs were the first. Brutal, insectoid, and ancient, their exoplates glimmered with the ash of stars consumed. Their war priests had once burned entire moons in the name of holy conquest. They did not kneel easily, but the venerant warlord, crowned in bone and stardust, rose from his molten throne in the viewing galleries. He turned to his advisors, whispered something, no translation came, and then he did what no Drax had done in over 12 millennia. He lowered his head, not in submission, in recognition. Then came the Voxari, cloud-born beings of pure neural gas. They'd once dismissed humans as meat vessels of emotional static. Their philosophies were carved into radiation, their memories transmitted through magnetic pulses. They had no bodies, no hands to raise or lower. And yet, the Voxari Prime, hovering in a toroid containment field, dimmed their core spin. Voxari for reverence. Thousands of their kind across the great clouds did the same, like stars blinking in silent agreement. The Sandlords of Jakar, 9 followed. Living statues carved by gravity and heat, they had once enslaved 8 minor species. They now drew glyphs into the air using particles of their own crumbling forms. Words formed not with language, but sacrifice. They let part of themselves fall into dust, shaping the phrase. We bow not to Terran blood, but to the courage of Terran memory. The tribunal hall was shifting. Lights dimmed, shields powered down. The tribunal AI, Concordia Prime, initiated a galactic relay. The gesture had begun spreading. Across solar systems, entire cultures paused. War fleets disengaged from sieges. Markets halted. Children were shown the speech of Iden Voss in fragments, fed through dreams and flickering holoscreens. And then, somewhere deep in the unaligned territories, a death cult known only as the Scorched Singers played an old Earth lullaby across their final battlefield. It was sung in Terran Standard, "You are my sunshine." But not all bowed. Above them, watching from the blackened crown ring of the chamber, stood the delegation of the Caros Imperium, the last and most powerful holdout. Unlike the others, the Caros had not shifted, not moved, not breathed differently. Their crimson robes shimmered with nano-woven death counts, each thread representing a conquest. Their minds, shared through a hive throne, pulsed incalculated resistance. Kairos had ruled for 40 centuries. Never bowed, never yielded. Their belief was simple. Emotion is entropy. Mercy is erosion. Compassion is the soft rot that kills empires. They stood unmoved. The tribunal's tension spiked like gravity thickening. Would the Kairos kneel? The celestarch of the Eternal Ones turned toward them. The golden figure, still half kneeling before Iden Voss, tilted their head in thought, then spoke aloud. Not with voice, but in pure awareness. You do not bow to Terran flesh. You bow to the memory they preserved. But the Kairos did not respond. Not yet. Instead, the Kairos speaker, a faceless construct wrapped in neural silk, turned to address the entire chamber. You ask us to venerate decay, it said coldly. To yield to soft bones who could not even protect their own cradle. The insult rippled. Voss stood still. Earth is dying, the Kairos speaker continued. Its waters poisoned, its skies wounded, its children fractured by war and regret. And now you come here offering compassion? No one interrupted. This was the dance of old power, of defiance. We respect no bridge built from tears. It was Malus of the Dvani who finally rose. A species of crystalline logic and ancient empathy. They rarely spoke twice in a tribunal's lifetime. Then you have learned nothing, Malus said, and you shall pass into the forgetting. That was the curse of the Dvani, to be forgotten by the archive, erased from memory. A fate worse than death for a species built on legacy. The Kairos didn't respond. Instead, they turned as one and walked out of the chamber. No bow, no gesture, just retreat. And yet, even their exit felt like the beginning of their end. Voss did not gloat. He did not speak again. He simply turned to face the center of the tribunal floor. There, beneath the holographic dome, a visual map of the known galaxy flickered to life. And as the echoes of his speech continued to resonate, subtle changes appeared. Planets once marked as hostile began transmitting peace frequencies. Regions long darkened by silence opened portals. Ancient archives, sealed for centuries, were unlocked, each one pulsing with Terran memory files uploaded by scattered human vessels across the ages. Songs, poems, sacrifices, forgiveness. They called it the bowing of empires, but it was never about dominance. It was about remembrance. The tribunal AI whispered one final phrase to Voss, quietly, privately, as the chamber began to empty. In a galaxy of cold stars, warmth is revolution. Let me know when you're ready for Part 6, The Covenant of Dust. You said, Part 6, The Fracture of the Kairos, 3 o'clock, 400 words. The Kairos launch a last-minute psychic assassination to silence Voss. But the Echo Hall defends him, activating a long-dormant relic embedded in his bloodline. A memory seal only humans could carry. It reveals Earth was once part of the first cycle, a lost race reborn in new flesh. Voss is protected by a voice older than the stars, his own ancestor, who watched the first sun ignite. ChatGPT said, the echo of history's silence had shattered once before, but nothing compared to the moment the Kairos struck back. In the Great Hall, Envoy Iden Voss stood just meters from where he had planted his final truth, his words still pulsing as living things. Delegates milled around, some still raising their banners in reverence. Yet a ripple of darkness brushed the perimeter. The Kairos speaker, nowhere to be seen, had unleashed the gravest weapon in their arsenal, the Mind Blade, a psychic assassin strike designed to silence not a life, but a legacy. It surged like a shadow, invisible, crawling through the echoes of the chamber. Voss felt nothing, until the edges of his consciousness began to fracture. Thoughts splintered, memories flickered, rewrote themselves, threatened to vanish. The delegates stopped. The light dimmed. Only the quiet rumble of impending oblivion remained. Time slowed. The Echo Hall, the ancient resonator buried beneath the chamber, reacted. In the second before all meaning evaporated, it sensed a foreign intrusion. A protective wave radiated outward, hitting the darkness like a tidal flame. The comrades guarding the dais fell back, as if a tempest had struck. Then silence. Voss stood with eyes unmoving, but inside, still spinning with potential death. The Caro's mind blade retreated, shattered by sound. Gone. Erased. Their most secret weapon repelled by resonance. The very thing they had sought to destroy. Delegates gasped. Some knelt. Others broke into whispered prayers. From a chamber's railing, a voice boomed. Not AI, not translator, but something deeper, a voice full of memory. Let no shadow consume what fire spoke. It was older than anything living, fragments of earth buried in human bloodline. The voice paused. Intention, recognition, assurance. He carries the first cycle spark. Let him stand. The crowd looked to Voss. He shivered, not from fear, but from the trembling realization. Beneath his skin, the neuroseal pulsed. Not active, alive. That relic had activated, not from technology alone, but from lineage. Something within him responded. Something genetic, ancestral, aware. In that moment, Voss remembered stories his grandmother told him as she pressed her palm against his chest. Listen, Iden. In every Terran soul, there's a song older than our species. We come from dust, but also from light. As if summoned, the neuroseal projected. It wove a golden glyph above his heart, not visible to the naked eye, only to those who resonated with history. He watched, mesmerized, as it grew into a miniature holographic map, showing Earth as a glowing node embedded in concentric rings of stellar systems, ancient and aligned. A cycle, a pattern. The rings pulsed outward: birth, expansion, vanishing, rebirth. Voss understood. Earth had not always been lost. It had been part of the first cycle, a species that touched the edge of cosmic dawn, vanished into myth, and returned in new bodies. He was its heir. The seal had awakened. The delegates gasped again, this time in awe. He didn't speak. The chamber hummed with his truth. From a gallery, the celestarch of the Eternal Ones rose, standing, deliberate, powerful, radiant. He is shielded by ancestry. A second glow appeared, rippling from the celestarch. A line reborn, witnessing again. Electric tension shivered across the chamber. Even a tribunal AI pulsed like a living thing. Then, deliberately, the voice continued. Let no blade, physical or psychic, silence the one who remembers. Far above, the Caro's banner fluttered in its containment field. Their colors bled, their unity fractured by intention betrayed. Voss closed his eyes. He remembered the echoed lullaby of his grandmother. We come from light, we return to light. He took a steady breath. The glyph collapsed. The neuroseal receded. The pulse ended. A trembling hush followed. None moved. Then, slowly, in unspoken coordination, delegations knelt. Not in worship, not in desperation, in recognition. The Drax leader lowered his crown of bone and grit. The Voxari dimmed their core spins even further. Even as Sand Lords bowed their sculpted forms. All except one. The Caros were absent. Their seat stood empty. The chamber's cameras showed no sign of retreat or response, only omission. One empire choosing erasure from history rather than fallibility. The voice echoed one last time as the delegates resumed a new calm. Let the cycle remain unbroken. Voss opened his eyes. He spoke softly, his voice echoing naturally, carrying across nebulae and worlds through the echo hall's timeless resonance. I stand not for Earth alone, but for every memory that begged to be heard. The chamber no longer hummed with tension, nor did the eyes of the delegates carry the weight of suspicion. What once felt like a council on the brink of dissolution had become something strange, something impossible, quietly hopeful. The Caro's Imperium, though silent and absent from the closing ceremony, had withdrawn without further violence. Their banners did not return. Their seat remained vacant. The tribunal did not pursue retaliation. They did not need to. Something greater had occurred. It had been less than a full cycle since Iden Voss stood at the center of the Echo Hall. Yet already, the galaxy was beginning to change. The Voss Concord, a formal agreement, forged not from coercion or fear, but consensus, was ratified in full by the remaining 12 species, with one unexpected addition. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a 14th voice was added to the tribunal. Humanity, not as a superpower, not as a conqueror, but as a reminder. The term voice had always been symbolic, a title reserved for civilizations that contributed not merely technology, but perspective. And now, by unanimous vote, Earth was granted this title. Delegates stood to sign the Concord with hands, appendages, or mind signatures. The ink they used wasn't literal. It was encoded light, bound in the fibers of tribunal fabric. Symbolic, unerasable. When the last signature pulsed into being, Iden Voss stepped forward and stunned them all. He did not sign. He did not bow, nor did he claim a seat. "I'm not a leader," he said. "I'm only the voice that was willing to weep." He placed a small crystal shard onto the center plinth, an old Terran recording device, the kind once used to document family stories in the post-Exodus years. The crystal glowed faintly, projecting an image of his grandmother's face, flickering and smiling as she recited an Earth nursery rhyme. "Remember the dark that taught you to see. Remember the wound that set your soul free. The stars are not gods. The stars are just skies. But the truth we must carry still lives in our eyes." Silence again. Even the AI in the chamber paused its ambient functions to listen. Voss looked to the ceiling of the chamber, where constellations had once been etched by the Drax millennia ago, lines of ancient war heroes and cosmic beasts. Now, new lights were being drawn between them, not to erase the old stories, but to connect them. A Sand Lord rose, their body shifting like flowing glass, and stated simply, "The 14th voice will not instruct. It will remind." The phrase passed like fire down the rows of delegates, repeated again and again until it was protocol, until it was law. The ceremony concluded without thunderous applause, without fanfare, without even a formal speech, because that was what made it sacred. There was no conquest here, just recognition. Voss did not stay for the reception. He didn't take a ship lined with honor guards or adorned in golden lights. He left the way he had come, quietly and alone. A personal shuttle hummed into orbit above the tribunal's moon station, then disappeared into a soft corridor of stars. No destination shared, no coordinates stored, just a man leaving behind a galaxy transformed. But even as Voss vanished from view, something ancient stirred. Far beyond the council systems, in a sealed, automated chamber buried deep in the memory cradle of Orias III, a long-dead beacon flickered to life. This place hadn't been visited in 1,000 years. It was a vault of recorders, living metals that had long since stopped recording. Their surfaces were covered in dust, untouched by hand or mind. Until now, the moment the Voss Concord was signed, the deepest crystal etched itself anew. A shimmer of heat, a flicker of old electricity, and the vault's central monolith, once black as obsidian, glowed with a pale gold shimmer. Words began to form on its surface. Ancient script, predating even the Dvani, curled into perfect lines. They bowed when the humans spoke. There was no signature, no authorship, because the galaxy now knew it was not Voss's name that mattered. It was the act. Across hundreds of systems, the moment spread like breath, a quiet ripple of change, not through weapons or fleets, but through remembrance. On a mining moon orbiting a dying sun, a worker paused his tools when he felt a strange pull to look at the stars. On a diplomat's vessel returning home, a Voxari child suddenly sang an Earth lullaby she had never been taught. On a warship still patrolling a contested zone, the crew voted, unprompted, to stand down and send a peace signal first. The change wasn't massive. Not yet. It was something else. Foundational. One voice had altered the axis, not because he demanded anything, but because he reminded everyone what they had long buried. That to lead wasn't to rule. To be strong wasn't to conquer. and that the memory of a single mother protecting her child could outlive even 1,000 empires. Somewhere, out there, Iden Voss was still traveling, not to be followed, not to be worshipped, but to be remembered when the stars began to forget again. And in the silence of the farthest archive, the last line etched itself across the monolith, a final punctuation to history's turning page. We fear the sword, but we were undone by the story.